Now we're live on YouTube. So
Love it.
yeah. So false start, excellent practice. Good morning, everybody. We are live today on YouTube. And my gorgeous friend Lillian and I. Oh my. So part of the plan today is to talk about Mercury retrograde and how not anything it is to panic about, especially, and yet we are having our own tech difficulties. And, Mercury's a brat. That's one of the energies of Mercury is it's childlike and it likes to play tricks. It's the trickster.
Yeah.
So
You
here we
know,
are.
I actually wanted to take it a step back and talk about these transits for folks, because I know that there's this sense of astrology coming down like a hammer or something, right? Like, uh-oh, here comes this thing. And I just wanted to share that it's pattern identification. Like any audience that's autistic would know that we just are looking at patterns as they affiliate with each other. And then it might be one of the maybe handful of ways that we share information with our past folks and with our future folks. We're assigning patterns that happen over and over to these symbol systems, and we're understanding them. So when Mercury, like you say, the trickster, comes to a halt, everyone should look a little bit trickster, take a step back and go, uh-oh, that guy is active. This is a problem. So yesterday, according to when we're going live, yesterday, Mercury stopped in its tracks and now it's going backwards. So going backwards, the feeling of it that I have, and you can share with me what you think, is I go inwards. I want to hear what I say to myself. I want to know what's going on with me. And there are two other things I'm saying, because Mercury is the planet of communication, that are kind of making that tricky right now, but not impossible. And one is the Mars with Venus relationship. And I think, I'm trying to think, let me take a step back. There's enough going on right now that you could say the wrong thing already in the wider chart. With Mercury going retrograde and the focus being inward, just imagine trying to get to your front door with a million packages between you and the front door. It becomes kind of an obstacle course to end up saying the right thing. And maybe you don't want to say, I'm tripping over 1,000 boxes. Wait, I'll get to you. I'm going to be at the door in a second. But if that's not what you want to say, it's going to take review and reconsideration and maybe rejection of things that you thought you'd get to keep on a small scale, on a scale of your opinions, short trips, siblings, that kind of thing. So I just went all over the place with that.
Yeah, we're done. Okay, bye everybody. It's
No,
been a
no,
good
no, we're
night.
not done.
Okay, I want to go back right to the beginning of what you were talking about because first of all, Mercury is not going backwards.
Right.
It
Thank you.
it's not. It has not stopped in its
No
tracks.
moonwalking for Mercury.
But I mean, that is the language that we get into, right? It's
Yeah.
quite literal. But the
Yeah.
reality is that from our vantage point, it's, us and Mercury and everybody else going around the sun. And from how it looks to us, Mercury just goes back and forth from one side of the sun to the other. That's why it never gets too far away from the sun in a chart, right? And so it's like I was saying to somebody, I was on a little bit of a road trip and we drove past a car that was going very slowly on.
Mhm.
I'm like, so we drove past and I'm like, see, because Mercury gets closer to us,
I love that.
right? And I
Yeah.
said, see, that car looks like it's going backwards, but it's just because we got close enough to it that now we've passed it. So that's the energy of it. The closeness is an important part of what we experience because we get to examine it from a closer up internal process, right?
Right.
And the retrogrades are absolutely not anything to fear
Right.
because I mean it's not that long ago in the early winter or early spring, late winter, I think, here. Everything went direct in a very short period of time. And
Yes.
and we can all agree that the acceleration of life
Yes.
earlier this year was undeniable.
Yes.
So it's nice to have some planets retrograde because whatever that is doing in your chart, you get to slow down. You
Right.
get to review. You have a minute to make adjustments, make changes, take a look at how it's going so far. That's the point, right?
Right. And laugh at the mania of it, laugh at the, not mania, that's not a good word, but the way that things kind of fall apart when we're not able to be 100% at intellectual capacity, right? Things kind of get wobbly in silly ways.
Yeah.
And then
I love
I'm sorry, I do want to say
oh,
one more thing. I
yeah.
love when you said it appears, because I always think of Karen Homaker Zondag saying this was the TV for us for millennia, this sky dance. And so that's where you see it. If you lay out in a field and you've got a good view of the sky, month after month, you're going to see these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I was just going to add into the things that you were talking about. We are, I believe, more sensitive to Mercury retrograde now because we're so tech dependent. And
Oh,
because Mercury is in
interesting.
charge of communication,
Right.
everybody experiences it so much more than we ever would have even 40 years, 30 years ago, you know?
Well, yeah, and I was talking about Alvin Toffler, and I'm going to get the book Future Shock, because I can't remember what the messages were beyond you will be overstimulated, we won't be able to keep up. I can't remember what the implications he suggested were. But I will say this, when you said tech, the immediate thing that I thought of as an astrologer is the higher octave of Mercury, which is Uranus, which is now in Gemini, right, at 0 degrees, which is ruled by Mercury. So that sense that you're talking about of that frisson, that little, it's really there. It's really there, even though it's in retrograde. And then the other thing, I've been including this a lot in kind of my weekly scheduling. I have a spot called blind spots. And when I think of the retrogrades, I think of a blind spot, in part because of the process that I associate it with turning inside. You're going to miss some of that crucial data. And then the other piece is things are going on beyond our ken. We're not seeing all of the plans and shenanigans. And I think we talked about how this will feel different when Neptune gets a little further away from Saturn and we start to see what's going on. And certainly I've advised clients and have used it myself that after the shadow period of Mercury ends, when it returns to direct motion, that's when I look for the information. So I go into Mercury retrograde with an awareness that there may be more blind spots than usual. And the way I use that on my weekly scheduler is I don't fill it in at the beginning of the week. I fill it in at the end of the week and go, oh, I didn't see that. Okay, interesting. Next time I'll look for it.
Very cool. Yeah. You brought up a point I also wanted to bring up with the Uranus
Yeah.
because that is something that I mean, I wanted to bring it up that the tech side of things is more vulnerable because Uranus being at the very beginning of just testing out the sign of
Yes.
Gemini is already flaky,
Right.
for lack of a better word. And now that Mercury is in charge of it, this is likely to be, I haven't looked ahead, so please don't hold me to this. In terms of like internet, like broader technology, because that's where Uranus is going to be in charge
Yeah.
of, that's where we're going to see it more likely is in the
Isn't
bigger
that
picture
interesting?
tech things.
Yeah.
But once Uranus has its feet, it understands
Oh,
its job
yeah.
in Gemini, then the Mercury retrogrades aren't going to be as dramatic, maybe. In Leo, yes, let's use the word dramatic. I like it. It suits the sign it's in. But Mercury or Uranus for the years or so that it's going to be in Gemini is going to be at the whims of every time Mercury goes retrograde, which is
Yeah.
4 times a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year, 4 times a year, three.
4 times. Yeah.
Those
Four
threes
times.
and fours, because of the triplicities and
I mean, we
quadruplicities
might go back
really
and
don't
find out
jive.
it's 3. I
Yeah,
don't know what to tell you.
it's either 3 or 4, but
Hmm.
it's very regular. It's the most
Hmm.
regular retrograde of all the planets. That's why we hear about it all the time. And so we are going to see some times where really you're likely, if you're having trouble, the message is get away from your technology. Like, just you need to
Interesting.
just step away from it, in my
I love
opinion.
that. Yeah, well, no, I get it. And it's funny that you were saying flaky, because before we got on, I was looking at Moira Press. I love their stuff. And Andy had a question today. What do you do if somebody's flaked out on you twice? And now I can go back and say, I was writing a much longer thing. Oh, mea culpa, la 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 la, try so hard. Some people don't know what time is. But now I can go back and say, I don't know if Mercury's stationing retrograde and everything's kind of kooky. I would look at the micro transits.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Jonathan is with us again today. Yay.
Hey,
Great
good to
to see
see
you.
you.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so before we change segments, I would like to bring up the fact that so Mercury is in Leo
Yes.
for this retrograde. So if you kind of want to get a feel for what Mercury is bringing, then look at the sign that it's in, look at the planet that's in charge of that. And so, the themes when it comes to Mercury and Leo, and my advice would be, if you want to avoid the some of the trouble that Mercury can bring, it's things that, like, when your pride gets in the way,
Interesting.
with Leo, I would worry about pride and ego getting in the way. And if you're running into repeated challenges, maybe take a step back and look and see if that's the thing.
Right.
You're not being creative enough, or maybe you're being too creative
Hmm.
in the aspect of the thing that you're trying to do. Maybe you're putting self-expression ahead of what the project actually needs.
Hmm.
Those are some of the themes. What are some of the themes that you can think of with Leo for Mercury retrograde?
First I was like, get out of my head. You know what I mean? And the second is, there's a strange thing. I think of this because when you heal from trauma, right? Emphasis on healed from, right? It's a scar, it's not active. Um, for me, the experience has been the more instinctive or confident I feel, uh, the more instinctive and confident I feel, the more I have to take a timeout. And I remember I was just talking to a doctor about, or not, was it a doctor? I can't remember. I was talking to somebody about the timeouts they do here in the States while you're getting a medical procedure or while you're checking in. They say timeout, they ask you your name, they ask you your birthday, and then there's enough time that's gone by that if a thought has run away, it has time to come back and you can do the thing appropriately. So triggered people or people who have been traumatized, who may not be able to count on their confidence because it has become a protector and is therefore not a reliable witness, can take a timeout. And if there's nothing to fix, there's nothing wrong. But if you find yourself in those jams, something simple to disrupt that might help during the retrograde. That's the only thing I'd add.
Absolutely. Yeah, just the simplest is stop and go, just walk away.
Yeah.
However you can do that, and then,
Yeah.
yeah, reorient yourself. So Jonathan says he just got a job offer. Is it Mercury through my 10th house? I mean,
Well,
yeah, anytime the house is
congratulations.
activated, for sure. Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope, does it look good? Are you excited about it? Um, Often what I think of when you've got a retrograde planet involved in a transit like that is read the contract very carefully. Um, and just be prepared that something might, once the retrograde is over, something might change about the situation, right? Something needs to
Absolutely.
get revisited. That's usually, I've seen people have to renegotiate contracts or have to just tweak things or tweak the
Yeah,
position
so
or
don't be surprised if there's something to go through. But then the other part is, have you been here before, Jonathan? Is this a job you've had before? Or is this something that you're overly familiar with? So you're revisiting it. And so it could be just ready to land in your lap.
right. And to the point of, the pride and the ego part of the question, make sure that the decision that you make, whether you take it or you don't take it, isn't wrapped around, putting your ego at the center of the decision. That would be the best protection, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So 24 seconds. So we should maybe move
So
on. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about Mercury in retrograde
I'm
in
sure.
Leo specifically? Because we're going to come back to general Mercury retrograde, but
Yeah,
that
no,
was
I'm
just the
glad you said
specific.
that because that piece about the confidence is specific to Leo. Not every
Yeah.
Mercury in a sign, and even the houses, when we get to the end of the session here and we go through all of the houses, some are more available for that and some are not.
Yeah, and I'll say this quickly. So the sign is going to give you sort of the personality things or behaviors maybe
Yeah,
to think about and the energy of the Mercury
right.
transit, but the part of your life is going to be indicated by what Mercury rules,
Hmm.
right? At one, and then where Mercury is moving through your chart.
And
Yeah.
speaking of which, so Jonathan, yeah, Jonathan must have that
He said in his 10th house.
well, that Jupiter's cruising, right? Eventually it'll get to Leo. So there's more
Mm-hmm,
coming. It's a nice
mm-hmm.
pathway for him. All right.
Yeah, for sure. So now we're going to talk about the sun moving into Leo,
Right.
which is not a separate thing because the sun is in charge of this Mercury retrograde.
That's right.
Um, And that's another thing to consider. I'm going to go back just a little bit.
Yeah.
My experience, and you can correct me if you're wrong, my experience with Mercury retrogrades, the worst ones in terms of just like it felt like tech chaos and communication disaster, has been the times when Mercury is in its own sign and there's other things going on, or when it's in its sign of detriment or fall. Those have by far, so Mercury in Pisces, Mercury and Sagittarius. That's a big one. I even did like a whole social media post on some of the disasters
Ah,
that one brought in.
yeah.
And then Mercury in Virgo and Mercury in Gemini. So, there you likely because Mercury is more intense in those signs, the problems are more likely to be bigger,
Yeah.
in my opinion, because
I
he is,
agree.
I mean, not just my opinion, but he is
Yeah,
in his purview, so he's got more reign to cause
exactly.
trouble, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, in Leo, the sun right now is at the whims of the moon, which is always fun. Um, but it's going to go and move into its own sign.
Right.
And so the planet in charge of this Mercury retrograde is going to be happy. I mean, don't we all just love that sun in Leo? Um, yeah, it's definitely positivity and it's going to buoy Mercury,
Yes. Because
but
there's
it's
more.
also gonna make the issues of the sign more noticeable.
Right.
Would you say?
Oh,
Right?
100%. Yeah.
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 It's Leo season. I can feel it already, right? Like that
Yeah.
sense of the warmth and wanting to reach out to the Leos. And, there were periods in my life where Leos were carrying me with a sunny disposition and a can-do attitude. And I can't help but think about that context of these are these are framed often as kings and queens in their own domain, but the real royalty is Leo, and the real powerhouse is the sun. And when Leo is, when the sun is in Leo, it's got all the support it needs to have vitality, to be creative, like we were saying, to be egoic in the way that's okay, to pay bills, right? I mean, I tend to think of, because I have Mars in Virgo, I think of an ego as my, what is it? My assistant, my personal assistant. And so I want my ego to pay bills, take care of things with lawyers, be the outward facing place. And part of that I got from Mal Frothingham's ingenious understanding of Leo. And she sort of divides it in two halves, where the before August Leos are offstage Leos or early degrees. And I'll have to ask her to find out what degree it's to. But we talked about, or she would talk about how you can't get access to royalty. You can't. It was easier when Obama was president. This is just a silly thing, simply because he's a Leo sun. The idea of walking up to him and shaking his hand is filled with formality. You couldn't just get to him. And this is true with that sense of Leo. There's boundaries and formality. And from my sense, the purpose of Leo is, I think of us all as fountains that spring out from our source. And once we clear away any obstacles, that's just what happens with us. It's just what we do. And I think of Leo sun being the most able to deliver on that promise. So the most able to find the way to be genuinely themselves in a giant way. And that's the promise of it. But with that comes, if there's no work on kind of clearing the path, right? Because we're all meat suits, there's, I think, sometimes a suction, where Leo's like sucking all the energy out of the room or sucking all the air out of the room. And when you're around a Leo like that, that's a difficult place to be, because then they can want a lot of energy and attention, but it's not working with that flow. I think of Leo as very much the applause that's given for a really good entertainer. And Leo's the entertainer. And they kind of have to receive that to function properly. And so their practice in life is to find the people who will celebrate them, and to get away from the people who can't see how cool it is that they have access to this tremendous clean energy potential.
Yeah, I like it. So Jonathan says that yes, he used to work at the humanitarian job. So we'll revisit that when we go to retrogrades in general.
Yeah.
Do you guys support sun sign horoscope readings, or you stick with the ascendant? Jonathan, I write sun sign horoscopes for the Llewellyn calendar, and I actually write sun sign horoscopes. I You don't have to write horoscopes to the ascendant unless you don't want to. I'm not gonna criticize. Because really, like, the easiest way to write a horoscope is just to watch, where the sun is going through the houses and talk about the houses.
Yeah.
But how I write horoscopes is about how is your sun sign being transited and what aspects are affecting that sun sign. And yeah, so yeah, sun sign horoscopes can be written sun sign. They don't have to be written for the ascendant. There you go. Um, Back to the sun in Leo. So I think I've said this before. You said something about Leo needing the audience, right? And so that I don't remember what I was reading, but it was talking about how, hot take, fire signs are the most dependent of all of the elements. And that, of course, because we hear about how Aries is independent and Sagittarius is independent and all these, well, independent in the way that they don't like being told what to do. That sign
Right.
does not like being told what to do or dictated. That doesn't mean that they don't need people around,
Right.
but they can boss around in some cases, lead in other cases, be on stage for in other cases. So
That's right.
fire signs, to get to the heart of who they are, need other people more than any other sign,
Right.
right? A water
Was
sign can bask in its own emotions all on its own.
But didn't you also say, maybe it was you, maybe it was Maul? And again, the offstage Leo are like the Leos who, they're so regal, they're kind of not available. And so you're not going to see the behaviors on the personal level. And then the on-stage Leos, I think, is what a lot of people write about, right? Like that need for people. We all need people. But I love what you said. My husband calls me a freedom fascist because I have a Venus in Sagittarius. And the main way to love me is to leave me alone. And it's terrible, right? That's a terrible.
Yeah. But at the same time, you like to cross the ties, as I do, not a criticism, an
Right,
observation.
right,
You
right. No, no,
can't
no.
do that without other people to hear it,
Exactly. Exactly. So
right?
it's almost like the function is to become that type of person, understanding what those things are for, but don't get attached to them.
Right.
We need you to talk, we need you to present, but you're representing other people and you're not alone.
Oh, Yonatan. He says,
Oh,
unfortunately, my Chiron is in Leo. Shining is not allowed. That,
we don't
mm,
believe that for a
no,
second.
we don't buy that. We
No,
don't
sir.
buy that at all.
I
At
bet
all.
you make other people shine because I felt it from the day you came to our
That's
show.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Wow, that you just gave me chills. That's a wound that
We're
we
just going
should,
to hold space for it.
yeah,
But thank you for sharing, and
yeah.
we'll address it as we go along.
You
But
are
sun
absolutely
on
allowed.
Chiron. Let's talk about the sun on Chiron, right?
Sure.
The sun visiting that wound, right? There's and it kind of compounds that observation role that can be so helpful, which is here you are, you're going to witness the wound of that Leo. Maybe somebody steals your shine, maybe you give it all away. There's something going on, but I would say, Yonatan, this is the month to say, I call myself back to myself. I call myself back to myself because Chiron's a teacher, not just a wound. He is how to color. He is
Well, and
amazing.
yeah, and the sun transit, anytime the sun is transiting anything, it's shining light on it. And so to have
Exactly.
the sun go over Chiron, and it's going to be a really pure light with the sun in its own sign, you can really see which part of that is wound and which part of that is lessons that
Right.
you're still working on. And to me, this, the job opportunity, revisiting something you've done before, the sun coming up to shine a light, maybe you would get to see how that the fear of the spotlight has gotten in the way, or being in the spotlight has gotten in the way of you moving
Absolutely.
forward. Because I don't know about you in this case, but to me, Chiron, often that wound is something that has stopped us in some way.
Certainly.
In whether it's in our personal evolution, whether it's an achievement, what of course depends on where it is in your chart and what
Yes.
it's doing.
Yes.
Likely in your 10th house, it's going to be a personal lesson there around your career and being visible for sure.
Right. Right.
And I'm going to say that you have a lot of teaching and sharing that you can help other people with around the Leo issues to
And
be the
eventually
teacher.
help other people shine in a way that won't deplete you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that Tamal and the Leo divide. I'd have to look at that. I like that. I believe that they're introverted and extroverted Leos 100%.
Right.
Um,
I like breaking up the
bleh, bleh,
sign.
bleh, bleh.
Sorry.
I know I can talk. I know I can.
You're good at
Um,
it. You're really good at
I
it.
have the problem is I'm having way too many thoughts at the same time, and they're fighting to come out of my mouth. So, um, with Leos, so Leos in my past, I don't know if you guys know this, but I was a hairstylist for a million years, and
Mm.
well, over 30 years. So it's not a small chunk of
I
change.
love hairstylists.
And that is how I learned sun signs, was just it was a conversation piece with my clients, and it's something. And then when I learned about the moon, well, my sun sign, moon sign book was on my station, and it was fun. It was a way to people's color processed, and we talked astrology.
Yeah.
And so many times I'm going to say that Leo was one of the signs where people are like, yeah, I don't believe in astrology because I don't connect to any of those things of that,
Right.
the needing the spotlight and the attention and all that. And as soon as I would say to that person, even the most resistant of people, but I'll bet you there's something that you're fiercely proud of.
Mm.
Never did somebody say no. Never, not one
A
time.
really good point.
And so the audience can be one. The
Yes,
audience for Leo does not need to be large. It does not need to be
absolutely.
global. It can be an audience of one. And likely, the more introverted Leos are not going to be any less proud of the thing that's important to them. They just need a smaller audience to get
Right.
validated for it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's kind of, I mean, my mom had Mars in Leo, and my experience, her hair always looks good. Always.
Yonatan, the funny thing is you don't actually see my hair because our background cuts off half my hair, but
We
thank you
could
so
like
much.
show you more hair.
It's like magically I've got like this mullet to my butt. No, it's not true, but it's, it keeps cutting the back of my hair off. Ah, it's so funny.
Uh,
Um, yes, I am a little, my Venus in Leo is a bit obsessed with hair for sure. In the fifth
and
house.
and I wanted to kind of touch in on that in terms of the Mars, how it can feel. My mom had Mars in Leo and was trapped in this really violent relationship that shut her down. And there is a way that I think that Mars gets, I'm sorry, Leo can get subverted. I in ways I never would have thought of. Coming back to the point, here I am. I heard this thing about Buddhists and Tibetan Buddhists, especially. They'd sit in a room with Westerners and they would say, do you guys know? I'm paraphrasing. Do you guys know why? Or do you guys know that we in the East don't hate ourselves? It's okay that we have a self. And, in the West, we're like, get rid of this thing, get rid of it. How horrible. Da, 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 da. And I forget that there can be that hatred of oneself because I've worked so hard to eliminate that, right? Because if you're traumatized and you hate yourself, that's so hard to come out of. That's so hard. So you have to, what I did is love myself, love myself, love myself. And that is a Leo benefit, but it really is incumbent upon folks with Leo to love themselves and to not be pushed away from that. And that loving yourself doesn't mean you're going to behave correctly. So to be open to correction, because like you're saying, you're with other people, but that doesn't disturb your love of yourself. You get to have that. And when you don't have that, that's a real red flag for Sun in Leo.
Yeah. You have to come clean. You're an honorary Leo.
Well, I may have a mutual reception between my Jupiter and my Sun
Between her Jupiter and Leo and her Sun in Sagittarius.
in the first house. Maybe.
Oh, that's so cute.
Well, then we can
Yes.
talk about idealization, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because,
Well, no, go ahead. Finish the thought.
well, just that when you love something, you can paint a picture of it and you can put stuff in the picture that doesn't really exist and then just cart the picture around. And it's really helpful again to ground yourself in your own human experience so that you can tell the difference between reality and the things you idealize. So you aren't holding people to expectations that are unrealistic.
Love it. Love it. Um, so the sun and oh, I just wanted to say the other thing that doesn't get talked about, I don't hear of it very often, is the purification energy of fire. And
Yes.
that, the thing that gets downplayed in Leo season is that the sun, you think about it, if the sun is too strong and the sun is too active, then we burn, right?
Yeah.
We burn, we get hot, we have to get out of the sun.
Yes.
And it's interesting because one of the things that we're collectively dealing with is the patriarchy and colonizing and all of that, which is very, very solar centered
Yeah.
in, the having the king at the top. That's a very Leo idea, the sun at the
Yes.
center of the whole story and that whole thing. And so one of the things I think we're going to see coming out of this particular Leo season is a lot of purification and a lot of light shining on the realities of that kind of hierarchy.
I agree.
Yes. And then it'll be interesting with all of the extra Mercury retrograde energy around Leo. and what,
Whew.
you think about what we're already revisiting, you know.
Wow. Yeah,
So yeah, it's going to be an interesting Leo season for sure.
I
Yeah.
agree. I'm specifically not talking because I don't want to talk about politics.
Well, and I just wanted to bring up one little purification
Yes,
thing,
yes.
right, that everybody could relate to. And so let's talk about the sun through the houses by transit. It seems like a cleaner
I love it.
transition, don't you
Yeah,
think?
let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. So um, I'm going to tell you why I I got obsessed with this topic, and it shifted my whole thinking around transits for sure. The sun is an easy one because it goes through the 12 signs in a
Really?
year.
Yeah.
You can easily mark sort
Yes.
of, if you're depending on the house system that you're using. I use Placidus, so there's different house sizes, and so it's not necessarily as straightforward. But I noticed one year, so right around my half birthday, which is in February, is when the sun moves into my 12th house. And so it's an interesting, this is it when the cycles conflict is
Hmm.
when we notice things like we as individuals are challenged, right?
Okay.
So at that halfway point in your year when the sun is opposing your own sun is one of the times to shine. It's one of the times for you to be out there and to be more visible. But if you're like me, and that's the time when the sun goes into the 12th house, you
Right.
don't have the energy to fulfill necessarily both of those things. So
Wow.
understanding that it's happening can
Yes.
be really helpful because when the
Absolutely.
sun goes through that particular house, rest more. So let's talk about it through each house.
Yeah.
You start with the first house. What do you think about transiting sun in the first?
So the first is what folks see. We mentioned the ascendant because that's really the first visible crack, but really the first house is a public house. It's about you and yourself. And so the focus would be on things that are specific to you, whether you're in a giant family or you're on your own, it would show up to be about you. It could be internal, or it could make you quite visible. That's my take.
Hmm,
I have a sun in the
yeah.
first house, but that ding dang Neptune on the ascendant just makes it all erase itself as it writes itself. If that
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the sun. The sun going through the first house is all of those things. And also, it gives you a chance to recalibrate, in terms of self-care and how, putting yourself at the center of things and how do you take care of yourself and what do you need to do to make that better. And if you're not, so that could be a tough transit if you
right.
don't have those things in place. And if you are somebody who gives yourself away to everybody, then the sun moving through the first can create quite a bit of conflict because then the rest of the world is like, why are you being so selfish right now? And you're likely not at all.
That's
They're just
right.
not used to it. And so it can be a recalibration around your relationships
I
and
like that.
how you are in the world in that way.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Now the second house. I
Mm.
love the second house does not get enough credit. I am so in love with the second house. When I realized that it wasn't just about our money and that
Right.
it actually comes down to our value and our self-worth and our self-esteem, it took on a whole new story for me. So the sun is going to come along when it's transiting. So if you have Leo in the first house on the first house, then you're going to have the sun going through there and it's going to be about how do you value yourself. If you're having issues around money, the sun's going to come and shine a light on
Yeah.
how you need to put yourself first to be able to monetize and bring those things that are important into you.
It's so complex to be human, isn't it? You
Yeah.
can't just listen to what other people tell you. You can't just listen to what you think. You have to like add reality to it. And then it's a constant kind of catching up with what works and what doesn't work, base it on outcome. So, yeah, all of that for the second house. It's funny that you say that because here's what I think. And I tend to think of the axis of the South Node, North Node. So I include the eighth house with the second house. And I often think you have to stop stealing. Stop stealing, like that. Isn't that weird? Just, that the eighth house is other people's stuff and the second house is our stuff, but it's stuff, right? And that there may be a little too much access. And so you're just providing for yourself and you're just kind of working with energy. So let me pinpoint that. I have Sagittarius on the second house cusp, and I tend to have to make money, energy, adventure, doing something. I can't just stack it up and enjoy it, and look at it and count it. And that is what released me from feeling trapped by money, is that I could understand that, what I give to you in friendship is more valuable, and what I give to my household in love and care is more valuable. And that when I'm looking for money, it's usually resources that I'm looking for and not actual cash necessarily. So those things help. And I don't know why I associate the eighth and second house with petty criminality, but I'm gonna add it in there. And then over time, we'll figure out what it is. I think it's human nature. Like here's for instance, I enjoy Reddit. I have to get off it a lot, but I enjoy Reddit. And one of the things I read was, what is the advice for people who win the lottery, that will fix everything because you get a lot of money. And they said, your chances of dying by murder increase by like 30% if you win the lottery, because people will kill you for money. And it's usually somebody and or somebody you learn to know through the money. And they just went through all this stuff that I never think about. I am invested in how we can be healthy with each other and create new communities that will sustain us and sustain the world. So it's not in my interest to find out how to mess people up or get somebody's something. But I think that I've pinpointed it, right? Because there's so much going on there. There's a different level of protection, whether it's occult protection, right? When we talk about the eighth house, which we'll get to, or discretion when money is involved, so people don't lose their damn mind, because it doesn't really fix anything. So I've introduced that. I'm going to take us one step further for something I want to talk to you about, maybe discussing, which is, I saw the most hilarious podcast yesterday, just a snippet, where the people from ResDog said, you know what I think is happening? I think all these white women becoming witches is a problem, and they've unleashed their hell mouth and they need to close it down. And I was like, you're onto something. We don't have our legacy people correcting us. Let's see what we can do about closing that hell mouth. Because if what's going on right now isn't a white hell mouth, I don't know what it is. Okay, I'm going to stop because that's kind of a joke.
So just one last little note on the second house and Leo. So Leo, I got into it on social media early in my astrology career. And I was doing like little vignettes of the signs on
Oh,
Instagram.
yeah. Yeah, I remember.
Just general, like just the sign, right? And
Yeah.
I got to Leo, and one of the keywords for Leo is generosity. And some other astrologer, young astrologer, posts, "Oh, have you never met a Leo?" And I was like, well, since you weren't paying attention, this is a general thing about Leo, and it's actually what Leo is supposed to be aspiring to, and or what Leo energy is supposed to be aspiring to. So that might be something that you face with the sun in Leo going through your second house is, are you too generous? Or are you not generous enough? Are you too generous with other people and not generous enough with yourself? Right.
Wow. Yeah.
And so whether the second or the eighth, that's something that's going to likely need to be visited. Or would be not necessarily need to be visited because something comes up, but would be a very powerful way to work with the sun going through either the second or the eighth house.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it reminds me of the value piece of it, because you don't just get your values from outside. If you don't have an inner navigation system of values, which you must learn and cultivate and practice, you're going to be swept away by the world. You are allowed an inner navigation system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So the third house, the sun in Leo in the third house. All I get to is writing down what you want for yourself, like taking a look at how you put yourself out in the world and communication ways to reinvent how you communicate, teach. Maybe a light gets shown on you need to be in a different community because the community that you're in right now isn't
Mm,
supportive, you
yeah.
know. Um, yeah, you go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is that, I think it's I mean, the image that I'm getting is, oh my God, how much fun would that be to debate people, or to be the
Mm.
one who's consulted, or, to provide your glowy, glowy sun vibe to a small gathering, right? Or take a trip that's short to some exciting place to really shine your light. So those are the positive things I think of. I think I have to go back to the second house for a split second to say, I think the reason why the stealing comes into place is because if you don't know it's valuable not to steal, you might assign a value to it that's inappropriate. You might think that's good. Okay, back to the third house. So I think you might be debated, you might be countered. There's a natural sibling connection. So beautiful for a summer trip, right? With your family, if your family loves you and makes you shine. That's what I would say.
Yeah, or if you're trying to figure out who you are in the world, the sun,
Right.
go on a road, take yourself on a road trip, go do
Yeah.
some self-exploration. That's a beautiful way to use Leo and the sun in your third house,
Isn't that gorgeous?
some
Yeah.
road trip and some self-discovery. Or, the third house is also like small courses, right?
Right.
And so any kind of a small course or learning or teaching that is going to help you
Challenge your
get,
mind. Yeah.
yeah, well, and get to the core of who you are, right?
To get to the core. Right. Because it's not mental. It's just,
Yeah.
this is the house where you're going to have access to more information, but it's to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. And I mean, the sun, because it's so wrapped up in personality astrology, it gets a lot of personality words attached to
Right.
it. But the symbol itself is infinity with the spark of the soul in the center. So it's a very spiritual symbol, and the sun is our essence, our vitality, right? And so that's the deepest place you can go if you're doing solar work. So it
Beautiful.
might be as simple as a journal, writing a journal,
I
because
love
that's a
that.
very
Yeah.
third house activity.
Yeah. Yeah. That works.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
So do you want to do the fourth house?
I do. So the fourth house is your family. So there might be an association with your, family of origin, things that feel familiar. We've talked about how things that feel familiar can be helpful or not helpful. I just offhand, Sun in Leo. So your fourth house is Leo. I want to be in that house. I know, like the vibe I think of is just clean, and it could be opulent, but it's put together really beautifully. It's shined up lovely. It's a house for entertaining, I would think, right? If you combine the warmth of the potential for warmth with that Cancer notion, which I'm just thinking about offhand, that it's leaving, there can be some really yummy times with family, and or your inner child, right? If you're not doing family, um, yeah, I think I'm all obsessed with systems right now. So my sense would be you want your home to function really well. So if things show up, rather than kind of assigning blame or something you need to fix or change, observe whether or not it's a system that's getting support and see what kind of support you can provide for it in a natural way. So, for instance, would be we're still working on our mail processing system here in our house. So we got a desk that's for that kind of stuff. We got stamps, we got envelopes. You create the conditions that are going to be successful. And when it's traveling the fourth house, it's traveling through your house of family and home. So to make sure that your home has all that it needs to nourish you.
Nice.
Yeah.
And all I want to add to that is that the sun has gone through the first three houses, which is the
Right.
self development. And once it crosses the IC at the bottom, it's now emerging. So
Yes.
there's that you're taking everything you learned, and ideally, you're taking it into the safe place of the people that nurture you and care for you, and testing it out with the people closest to you first, right? Before you
So
take it up
smart.
to be seen.
That's a
So,
really good acknowledgement of the IC. So your strongest defenders will be there. And so if
right.
you're going through, you'll see if they work or don't.
But also, the
Yeah.
IC is the stuff that we bury, and the sun is going to come and shine a light on the shit that you need to dig up.
Yeah.
So, this isn't always, depending on your chart and your history and everything. There's of course, the astrology, there's a million things this depends on. But the sun going through the fourth could be a time where you do a lot of work on yourself, depending
Right.
on what your family history, trauma history is.
Right.
Um, but the sun is going to come along, first of all, to support you and bring you warmth, right? And it's there to shine a light on things that you are ready to deal with, right?
Yes. I like what you're saying there. So it's not a cudgel. And quite often, especially when we feel as though we're re-experiencing, like there's like if you have the sense of like, oh no, I thought I fixed that, and then you're experiencing it again, the astrology I practice says that's probably a sign that it's ready to go, and not a sign that you failed and now you're just doomed to do this over and over again. So you say the appropriate goodbyes, you acknowledge the weight of what's there, and maybe you go burn something, maybe you tear something. You know how I love to burn stuff. Oh my God. Maybe you give it to somebody who can use it or donate it somewhere. So there's a process of digesting it, and then your core is free to have that expression. And so it if you can do it in a loving way on your own, yay. And if there are people around to help you, yay. And if there aren't, imagine them, think about them, invite them. And then one thing I've thought of recently, because somebody told me about it, is after you've digested these difficult things, that's magnetism. The process of letting go creates space for things to just arrive, come to you. So
Yeah, I like it. So we have 6 minutes in the entire episode. So let's accelerate through the other houses.
let's do it.
So fifth house. Well, this is the sun's house. If you're going by, Aries on the ascendant, this is the house of joy,
Yeah.
creativity, children. So, you might find that you're spending time with children.
Yes.
You might find a desire to be more competitive. I mean, competitive sports are in there as
Right.
well. So there can be a more desire to be physical and get out there and move. I find for me, I actually Leo starts in my fifth house. It's not
Okay.
ruled by Leo, but
Yeah.
Leo starts in my fifth. And so I definitely want to play more. I want to maybe connect with people, but maybe just go out and see the world and
Like do.
adventure. And
You want to do,
I
right?
do want to do, it's true.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, when I think back and when I started making the coloring books, that was the sun going through first aspecting the fifth house ruler and then going through the fifth house. And
Yummy.
so that, yeah, like that need to create and do
Yeah.
something creatively was very triggered at that time. And it'll come around again when it goes through my
Yeah.
fifth house. Yeah.
I have nothing
So
to add. Let's do the sixth.
enjoy it. And also romance, right? You
Yes,
might want to kick up romance, and
that's for
you
sure.
might have to see, maybe you're putting the other person ahead of yourself in romance.
Isn't that
Maybe you need to
interesting?
put yourself at the center. Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, that might be a thing. Sixth house is going to be about, that's where my sun is. So
Uh-huh.
that's, my solar return. So maybe it's time the sun is going to shine a light. Maybe there's some routines you need to tweak and work on. Yeah, that for me, that's where my balsamic solar phase
Got it.
starts. So
Yeah.
my energy drops,
Got it.
once that. that transit until the solar return hits.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, you might decide to get a pet. Small animals are in the
Right?
sixth
Small
house,
animal.
you
Well,
know.
I always think, I know I've shared this before, but the Pema Chodron story about the Dakini bliss, that she was in isolation, she wasn't speaking, and all of a sudden she was surrounded by all the dimensions and all this stuff was going on, and she was really like, and then she went to her teacher and she described it, and he went, "Oh, the Dakini bliss, you were in it." And then immediately she was like, I was, let me try to get back into it. But it's that sense of that connection with the greater world. And the note is, it may not feel normal.
Mm. Well, and there's a sense of preparation in the sixth house too,
Yes.
because the sun is about to go up over the horizon. You
Yes.
know, so if the your chart is so that um you'll have Aquarius rising likely, then you know when once Leo moves up, no, you likely have I have that wrong. Pisces rising. Anyways, as the sun moves up, you know that that energy is going to be more visible to everybody,
Exactly.
right? And so
It,
there is a
a
feeling of
desire to look good, a desire
yeah,
to,
preparing, and the
yeah,
sun can come along and show you where you're not taking care of yourself, you
yeah.
know, with your routines and what it you need to tweak.
And
Yeah,
it can inflame stuff, right?
it can dry stuff out, so if you have wet issues it can be really helpful, or it can heat stuff up for sure. um
the uh, the seventh, huh?
Yeah, the seventh. Well, that's going to shine a light on your partnerships and your connections and the contracts that you've signed and the doctor that you have and you know the people that you're working with one on one, your clients. It's
Yeah,
a great time to do some kind of a if Leo is your seventh house or the
right.
sun is going to go through your seventh house, it's a really good time to examine your client work if you do client work, how you
Yes.
want to tweak it, how to improve upon it. The sun's going to come and shine how to be more present with your
Yes.
client work. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's that thing about the seventh house being, I'm, like I said, I'm a first house person. So I'm always really shocked because the seventh house folks have to listen to other people and it's built in, like absolutely built in. And so there's not really a question. There's just, why aren't you doing it? And I'm always like, because why are you doing it? So that sense of being being influenced by other people or influencing other people is there from here to that last quarter phase.
Nice. Hmm.
Yeah.
And then, and of course, your relationship's going to get a little bit of fire added to it, whether it wants it
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider.
Yeah.
So the eighth house, I just had a realization that the sun going through the fourth is going to shine a light on the stuff that might need to get worked through. The eighth is when you're going to actually work through it when the sun gets there.
Interesting.
How
Okay.
to the sun in the eighth is going to show you how to work with what you
Yes.
uncovered with the
Yes.
fourth or
Yes.
anything along the way, really. By the
Yes.
time it gets to the eighth, it's like, now how do we deal with the issues that are getting in the way, right? And with the maybe the systems that are getting in the way,
Yes.
and how can we then move forward and approach it more creatively, because the if it's
Yeah.
in Leo, then
It
the sun in Leo
wants.
is going to give you some creative techniques to deal with things,
I
right?
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just a brain fire. If you have Leo on the eighth house, some art therapy would be pretty magical during that time,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would assume that there'd be the potential to be distracted from your own systems because other people need you for kind of covert stuff, or like I think of the executor of an estate as being an eighth house kind of practice. And so that's not your stuff. So how do we get to your stuff, right? Like being able to keep those two a little bit separate is helpful for those eighth house folks.
And maybe some creative sexy time, because that's, you know, that's
Without
put
a
yourself
doubt.
first in the
Fancy
bedroom.
creative
I
sexy
mean,
time.
Leo on the eighth, you're likely doing that already. But, you know,
We
the sun's going to come along and warm that up potentially.
That's
So
right.
we just have to
That's right.
remember that part.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and in the second house, just to put a pin on that, self pleasure could be an
Mhm.
emphasis. So,
I like it.
so ninth house, Yum.
Well, that's the sun joys in the ninth. That's where
Right.
it's the happiest, you know.
Yeah.
It's just about to be at the brightest point in your chart. So the
Right.
energy and anticipation is just, on fire in the ninth. Adventures, learning new things, especially those big idea things,
But it's
deciding,
preliminary, right? Like
yeah.
it's a cadent house. Am I right about that?
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
it's not a doing house necessarily. Thinky. So it can be in
Prep,
your
prep.
prepare. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the sun going through there is going to show you the steps that you need to take in terms of the ninth house thing. So if you want to take a trip, you might start planning it then.
That's right.
If you want to go back to school, go back to university, plan it. If
Yeah.
you want to publish your book, then
Right.
plan it, right?
Yep.
That the sun in that house will show you the steps to take in those areas. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Love
then
it.
the 10th, well, the 10th, it's going to cross your midheaven. It's the highest point the sun can ever be in a
This is
chart.
you, Jonathan.
Yeah, that's right. And so literally the sun going over the midheaven and into the 10th house can shine a light on you
Yes,
to the world
that's right.
potentially, if that's what you want. If
It's
that
the
is,
yeah.
the sun going through that house is giving you the opportunity to see how big you want your world to be,
Yes.
right? The sun is going to shine a light on how big
Yes.
potentially your world and your presence in it could be.
I like
And
that.
so, that could be terrifying because you don't want to be out there that big,
Right.
or it could be inspirational and just jazz you up to realize that you want to be a bigger presence in the world,
I think
you
that's
know?
beautiful. Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. That sense of you know, understanding that people could have Chiron in the 10th, right? And they're getting really different messages and really struggling with that sense of vulnerability in a very public place, right? It could be the key to figuring out how to keep that Chiron healthy and vital and protected, because that is quite a vulnerable thing. So that's for Yonatan.
Well, and I feel like, if you do have something like Chiron in that house and the sun is going to go over it, it's the potential is it's going to shine a light on the Chiron things that need to be addressed for the
Right,
level of success you want,
right.
right? And
Yes,
so the thing that I would want to be paying attention to is that it happens privately and not publicly.
I
So
like that.
to stay aware,
Yes,
that these things might come to the forefront and that you are, you know, Leo, there's a piece of about integrity in the sign of
yes.
Leo. And so I feel like this and the sun in Leo going through any house can potentially show where maybe integrity needs to be looked at, where it
Mhm.
could be exploited,
Mhm.
so things like that, but also, how you can be a superstar and how you can, go out there and shine and be that Leo presence in the world that we need in the
I
10th
love
house.
that.
Now the 11th, give me your thoughts about the 11th house. I mean, it's the luck house. It's this, hanging out with big groups of people that you share ideas
It's
with.
what do you utopia, right? It's
Mm,
idealism, groups that have a purpose, right? And so the Leo sun, if you have Leo in that house, it could be that you're a leader of groups. And so you could be getting more information about how to refine that. You could be the clown of groups, kind of the opposite of a leader. And you could be getting insights about how that can be more productive, or whether or not you're able to support yourself and not just give everything away to groups. There's always the good and bad components of things that we get to see. Um, but yeah, I think ideally it would be this yummy, like I would schedule my conferences for this period of time. If I had Leo in the 11th house, I would make sure that I was visible. I would um, sort of set up a background of information so I could assess it afterward, but I would let that play just happen, see what I could do to get things out of the way.
Yeah. Well, and the sun going through that house is going to light up, whether you're still aligned with the groups that you're working with,
Right.
whether, the people that you've brought into your world, whether they are raising up that Leo in the way that it
Right.
needs to be.
Yeah.
And also there's going to be um, connection opportunities and networking opportunities when the sun in Leo is going through the 11th house,
Yes.
that could have, could bear fruit for a really long time. And so, if you're having a contrary transit or
Right.
a contrary progression or something that is not social, being aware of being selective about those, putting yourself in those opportunities, but be selective about them. Honor the other things that are going on for you.
I like
Um,
that. I like that.
yeah,
A little more
thanks.
protection for the Leo vibe, right? Everyone's like,
Yeah.
go be the star, something like
Well,
that. It's a burden.
because we've all seen the charts where it's like there's one lone thing up at the top of the
Yeah.
chart. I don't know how many charts I've seen where it's the moon.
Yeah.
It's up at the top and it's like
Yeah.
it's holding the entire, so big image of you. And it's like,
Right.
okay, transit, go.
Yeah.
And not everybody is designed to be out in the world and seen easily,
Exactly.
So be selective and do it in a way that honors who you are, because that's what the sun in Leo is going to ask you
Right.
to be, is who you are, right? And then
Yeah.
we mentioned the 12th a little bit, but that's where we go to rest. It's where we
Right.
go to meditate. That's where we go to connect to the spiritual part of the universe, ourselves, understand our place in that connectivity, So it's a
But that's
much
also
quieter
like,
time.
it can be, but it's also where you know, I was kind of joking about white women adopting strong lineage, mystical paths without guidance, being a hellhole generator. And the problem is, it's also where your dreams and nightmares live and how you imprison yourself. And so it's really important to let that rest happen and to not attach yourself to the wounding that you see. It's a big difference if you're wounded versus identifying with wounds that are none of your business. And in the world of the 12th house, everything exists. So, it's one of those spaces where I would say a manual cheering up might be necessary so that you don't get lost in amongst these other visions. So,
I love that. And having just that whole axis, the 6th and the 12th, I
yes,
wanted to say the sun coming along to that axis on either side has the potential to shine a light on what is stealing your vitality. And that doesn't matter that
love
it's
that.
in Leo. It just is the sun
That's right.
coming along and showing you where you're depleting yourself.
Right.
And so that doesn't disagree with your point at all. I think that getting lost in the ethers of,
That's
these
draining.
ideas is,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely can be something that sucks all of your vitality,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, for sure.
And there's a difference between resting and going into that crazy mental world, right? I often in these days, like, I don't like the current administration. I'm really freaked out by what's happening in the United States. A lot of times I have to go feed the fish or sweep or do something physical in the world because it doesn't matter what's going on in the broader world. This has to function. And so that thing of understanding that if you're resting and your mind is just, you know, besieged, you're not resting. And take a break, come back, try again. It is important to rest, but it is also important to know what rest is.
Absolutely. And also the other thing that we didn't talk about is that um there are reputation issues that come up in the 12th house. Like
Yeah.
progress moon moving through the 12th house, we say, like, just, if you're putting yourself out there in the world, it's like the 12th house is the place where things can get in our own way that we're blind to. So the sun
Right.
going through that is actually going to show us the
Yes.
ways, like potentially show us the ways that we get in our own way, is
Yes.
another really important part of
Yeah.
that transit. But the tricky part about it is that if you do have a really visible chart and you comfortable putting yourself out there, you might be like jazzed to do that as much as possible while it's going through that quadrant, right?
Yep.
And in the 12th, that could actually be counterproductive.
Right.
So if you are in that process of the sun moving through that part of your chart and putting yourself out there more and really sort of churning up your public image, once it goes in the 12th, you lose control over what that looks like.
So
And
interesting.
so, paying attention to that and maybe pulling back once the sun moves into the 12th might be something that you have to do.
Alternatively, the thing that you're doing may fall apart. And the example I have is my husband went to go get his master's and joined the student union, and as a student representative was on the board of directors. And they ended up selling the school, fighting for accreditation. And he was a student at that school. He would prefer to learn, you know what I'm saying? And so it was really fascinating that what he was pouring himself into was dissolving. And so it's not a reflection of yourself necessarily. To your point, anything could happen. And it's just to stay true to who you are, have that
Yeah,
intent.
it's not about fault. It's just about like being aware, paying attention to, I mean, it's like in business, it's the thing, you're supposed to pay attention to how things are being received and how they're functioning. If all of a sudden you're doing something and it stops working and is actually
Right.
having the opposite effect, just pull back in that area.
That's right.
Just about observation and, doing things on purpose,
Yeah.
which is what I'm working on right now.
Yeah. Same, same, same.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe this is the end. Like, we
Oh,
didn't even get to the one segment. So, in lieu of talking about a general Mercury retrograde, I do have an article I wrote, so I'll stick it in the
that would be great.
description. So if anybody wants to read just a general take on um, Mercury retrograde and how to work with it,
Right.
I'll make that available in the comments. Thanks for being here, Yonatan. Thank you, everybody who watched.
Jonathan.
May the force be with you during
Yeah.
this Mercury retrograde until August 10th, then the shadow phase for, a few more days.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks. Thanks, Lillian.
Thanks. We'll see you next
Bye,
week.
everybody.
Bye.
There we go.
Ooh.